In this video, I'm going to describe my process in redeveloping my standard reed. While I began this model in 2017 making a tip taper reed, as described in Jim Mackay's Bassoon Reed Method, Lou Skinner's Theories and Techniques, I found that over time, I began looking for another kind of sound and response in my own playing on this model. In this video, I'll talk to you about what I've changed and why, in the hopes that it may inform you on how you might approach a change in your own reed design. So, are you ready for this?
It's warfare time! Brontosaurus!
And don't forget, if you like this video and other videos on this channel, to hit the subscribe button, make sure that notifications are on so that you can find your way back for the next one. One of the difficulties of making a strict tip taper reed is the necessity in profiling the parallel part of the blade so thin. In practice, when we start from a thin profile, a reed can often be too weak to use, and in general, when profiling our own cane, we want to always have room to scrape more, rather than having no room at all. What I was noticing was that to get the playability I was looking for from the standard reeds I was making, they had a slight tendency to sit in the middle or towards the bright end of the sound spectrum. And in order to compensate for this, I moved away from a strict tip taper by thickening the area of the profile by the collar slightly and tapering towards the falling off point in the first third of the reed, so as to create a bit more pyramiding of the fibers, meaning I added resistance, or dampened the vibrations. When testing the reeds, I've always followed the same checklist as I do every reed. Sound quality. Is the reed tending towards too dark or too bright? Pitch. Is the one-fingered E holding its pitch, as well as the C sharp below it? The low register articulation. Does it play easily in the piano dynamic? High register articulation. Can I tongue a chromatic scale of 16th notes from high G, going up every quarter note until I reach the top of the instrument? Last spring, I got my hands on a straight version of a Rieger 1A shaper, and after now having made over 100 reeds with it, I have to say, simply by swapping the shape from a Fox 2 to the 1A while using the modified profile I was just describing, it's made a huge improvement in the quality of sound from the average reed. One of the reasons why I think that this has been such a positive change has to do with the two tip profiler templates I use, because they were originally designed by and for bassoonists who use the Rieger 1A shape and not the Fox 2. Now, let's go to the desk and take a look a little bit more in detail about what I'm talking about. Hey everyone, so here we are at the desk, and what I'm going to show you is I have three kinds of reeds here. And the first two, which you can see here with a wax thread, is actually a strict tip taper, as defined in the Lou Skinner's, in the Bassoon Reed Manual, Lou Skinner's Theories and Techniques. You may not know this, but I took a residency with Jim Mackay in the spring of 2018. The main idea, the point was to look at the Skinner collection, specifically interested in the reeds of Wilhelm Knochenauer and Karl Mechler. And the tip taper reed is coming out of the designs of Wilhelm Knochenauer. And so what I've done is I made actually three quite what I would call strict tip tapers, where I actually, as you know, in order to make a theoretical tip taper from earlier in this video, you actually make the back of the reed parallel. The profile is actually parallel and very thin, and then it tapers towards in the last third from the collar towards the tip. And in order to achieve this in a realistic way, because our profilers, the blade can't just come and cut flat. It has to actually cut downwards always. So we're not theoretically making a parallel profile when we're using a hand-operated profiler like any of the ones that you know. So what I did, in fact, to create this tip taper reed in a strict sense was using the Precision Music Products profiling machine. actually a profile copying machine. I just took simply a piece of gouged cane as the template, and then basically made it so that whatever the template was measuring, the blade would be cutting much thinner down. And so effectively what I created were a bunch of pieces of cane which were completely flat in the profile and were thin. And then in order to create the tip taper, after forming the reed and cutting the tip off, I ran it through the tip profiler, and that did, all of the work, in fact, and created quite a strict, in terms of theory, tip taper reed. I also used a Fox K shape. In any case, you can see on here, if you look at the fibers of the back part, you can see that the fibers are it's just straight lines, and it's because you're seeing the fibers essentially at a cross section. If you think about it, they're just perfectly flat. The blade cut down to a certain level and then kept that area flat. And then as we see where the tip profiler began, which is about from this area here, we can see the pyramiding of the fibers towards the tip. And this created quite a very nice reed, exactly in the way, or at least because these are new reeds, they respond exactly in the way of the reeds that I had tried that were in the Skinner collection by Wilhelm Knochenauer. I'm not saying that it's an exact copy and I'm the greatest reed maker in the world, all of that. All I'm saying is that these respond in a very similar way. I then have six reeds here, which are Fox 2. In the last version of what I was making, what I called the standard profile reed. And this I had already explained earlier. And then I have the new version here, which are all Rieger 1A. And in fact, I went again, as you can see, there's some shavings on the table. I went again and tip profiled everything with the same template, just so that I could be more clear that there is a difference in the shape between the Fox 2 and the Rieger 1A, but the profile is really quite the same in both. And so in this case, even though it looks, so compared to the tip taper reed, this reed, you can see that the fibers are relatively straight, but if you look at about 1/3 down, 1/3 back from the tip, so where my nail is roughly, you can see that the fibers are not quite at the same level. So the top of at the collar, at the top of the screen, it tapers straight down to the point where the tip template actually makes contact with the wood at the tip of the reed. You can see really at the moment, the tip template actually makes contact with the blade there. But it does descend in a straight line almost all the way from the collar to that point. So what I end up creating is I create two descending lines rather than something flat and then something that descends towards the tip. And the reason for that is because the reeds were coming out relatively bright from and as I explained before, I raised the collar, I made the collar thicker and created this long descent towards the tip so that I could increase the resistance and maybe darken a little bit the sound or dampen the vibrations. The Rieger 1As I've got here, in terms of difference between what you last saw, it's really just the shape. It's the same descent. I mean, the cane here, the quality is a little bit different. You can see that the fibers are packed a little bit more densely, but it does do the same thing where it descends towards the tip. I think my thumb is in focus, yeah. And you can see where the tip template comes in contact there at the center. It does do some work back here as well, but that's the most obvious area right there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to try a few of these. You're going to have an idea maybe, and maybe you're going to listen and it's all going to sound the same. But I'm going to give you a couple of comments about the differences here. What I feel weird about this mainly because I haven't tried it with this particular setup, but like we're not in a recording studio, we're not in a concert hall together. I don't know how much is really going to be you're going to really take away in terms of maybe the quality of sound. But certainly one thing that's important here, which I know you're not going to, it's not going to come across, is the quality of projection. So the first thing I'm going to start with is these tip taper reeds. I'll just put it here so you can see the tip opening. So it looks very nice, looks very normal. I'm holding it with my left hand. I wish I could close the tip, but my bassoon will fall over. So this reed is very dark in its quality of sound, but also it is really not projecting, which is important to say. It's a bit resistant only because I haven't really, I just made it a couple of days ago, and I didn't want to do too much. I wanted to stay more in the theoretical level, and so if I were to play this, I would scrape it just a little bit more. But it has a very blending sound, let's say. It's not particularly bright in any way, but this is very much in line with what I had noted and from these Knochenauer style reeds. Now, what is the case in some examples is that the Knochenauer reeds can be often really, really thin, like below 0.7 millimeters, and then really not taper off until the last 2 millimeters. This is a great, probably chamber music reed, second bassoon orchestra playing piano, that sort of thing today. But who knows, in a smaller orchestra 100 years ago, this might have worked just fine. I'm also playing on a 5000 series Heckel, which is the series of Wilhelm Knochenauer. I think he had number 5000, but he was obviously making for 4000s before that, and possibly some 3000s, but certainly 4000, 5000 series are reeds which this reed would have been useful with. So maybe if you play on a brand new Puchner, superior model or something, it wouldn't work for you. So let's now take a look at these Fox 2s. So already in those two, I feel like the sound is a bit brighter. It does have the feeling that it's projecting more, but independent of the quality of projecting or not projecting, is bright and dark. And that we're already within two reeds. It feels much brighter overall on the spectrum. I say much, but like a clear step in the direction towards something which is bright and something we don't necessarily want. Yeah, so already you can hear that there's an edge or a vibrance in it. And I hear in the high B flat that there's a brightness in the core of the sound which I wouldn't want. probably the best one so far. Yeah, and the same thing is there in the high B flat. What I generally encounter more often than not, so when we're talking over many, many reeds, what I generally feel is that when I really want to push in the sound on the Fox 2, the reed brightens up and gets louder at the same time. It doesn't necessarily simply get louder. It also starts to brighten in the sound. And you can hear me pushing some notes where if I'm going wah like that, it's not just the dynamic that opens up, but you can hear bah, and then something's going on more. I have two there which I like also because they're not displaying that quality. And when I hit the high notes, certainly the high B flat and the high C on my instrument can be quite bright and thin if I play on any reed, I guess you can say. But with the Rieger 1As, as you're going to hear, it doesn't display that quality in the same way. So I don't hear that difference when I'm pushing the sound of the reed. I get the quality of sound, the tone, timbre, let's say, is remaining the same while the volume increases. That's a great example of what I'm talking about. This thing can pretty much with a tiny bit more scraping, because as you can see, the very center of the tip is a bit too thick. And if I took that away, I could do anything in terms of articulating at the very bottom of the instrument in piano or pianissimo. But the reed really responds with the sound color that I want, with an even sound color. But that's a quality which is what we all want, I think, when we're making these, especially in an orchestral situation. In a solo situation, that's different. So I can really hear the high overtones just appear when I get to really sort of the last quarter of the crescendo, and then as it decrescendos as well. I don't know if that comes through as well. But I certainly feel like that somehow is tied to the shape. So you get an idea of at least what's going on in my head when I come up with a new model. You see me testing what I'm thinking about. It's not necessarily, these are things which aren't necessarily apparent maybe to you in this video, but you have to understand that these decisions about what I like or what I don't like, it comes with experience of making 40 reeds or 50 reeds, not 40 at a time, but, 10 here, 10 there, 10 there. And you realize that the things that you don't like are just coming again and again in a reed, and you're trying to make adjustments, but whatever you're doing while keeping the shape and the gouge the same, it's not solving the inherent sort of tendencies that you don't generally like. So after having changed the profile to help dampen the reed down, the final nail in the coffin of the Fox 2 was the shape. And it was the Rieger 1A, which I ended up switching over to, and that's been really good for me. Ultimately, choosing what reed is right for you is, do you think that someone else is going to want to listen to the sound that you're producing? That's a really high-level question, really, because your immediate goals are, does it have a good sound quality? Is it in tune? Is it going to play on time when you require it? Is it going to do the things that you command it to do when you're playing the bassoon properly, assuming, good air support, tonguing accurately, and so on? I hope that you learned something in this demonstration. If you want to see more info on reed making from me, visit the bassoons.ch Facebook page, link below. You can watch over 30 live streams on reed making topics. And don't forget to please consider supporting my online work by becoming a patron via Patreon, or by ordering one of these standard reeds at bassoons.ch. Thanks very much for watching, and take it easy. Bye-bye.